Welcome back for another episode of Christian Conspiracy Coalition, a place where the best minds of the conspiracy realm gather to share and discuss their faith, Christianity, and the spiritual war thrust upon humanity. In 1974, the Club of Rome, an influential global think tank, proposed a provocative geopolitical framework dividing the world into 10 regional blocks, now widely referred to as the 10 Kingdoms. Born from concerns of overpopulation, environmental degradation, and economic instability, this proposal sought to address humanity's growing crises through regional cooperation and sustainable governance. On the surface, it's been pitched to the masses as a means of solving the world's issues, yet festering just below the surface in an ever so obvious facade is the blueprint for globalized authoritarian control, and even hints at biblical prophecy. Revelation 17:12 through 14 states, "The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords, King of kings. And with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers." For truthers, opposing authoritarian regimes has been woven into the very fabric of its communities. From the European Union to the United Nations, people have had an uneasy, guttural response to such globalized homogeny. Yet today, large elements of the same community now cheer in wondrous applause for the foundations of the North American Union under Trump. To help me discuss this topic and so much more, I am joined by Brandon Kroll of the Dana Manor Daily Podcast. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, Drew. Thanks for having me on as the only co-host.
Well, it's a controversial topic, as we've found out, mate. It is a
uh,
busy time of year. Again, it's the first month of 2025, so there's a lot going on, but I feel like this one's going to ruffle a few feathers with the impending inauguration of God Emperor Trump.
yes, the monetary messiah of the West, as he seems to be being portrayed more and more as. I was telling somebody the other day, I said I would not be surprised if he ends up getting like assassinated with the mortal head wound. With again, you think you saw the thing I did in my stories, and
Yeah,
it goes right for that particular eyeball for the one on the left. I was like, and then somehow Musk is like, "Don't worry, I can fix this," and he puts
I've
something in
I
there.
have the Neuralink.
Yeah, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's awesome!" And it's just like, "Yep." And everybody else like, "This is so great." Like, anything they throw at him, he cannot die.
Well, it's an interesting point because I think we do need to talk about Trump first before we even start to touch on the 10 Kingdoms, because in a lot of ways, it's been put out that there has to be a leading personality for each of these blocks. And
Mm-hmm.
Trump at this point, with the rhetoric around him being the last president, air quotes, and setting up a dynasty, it alludes to like a Caesar-esque type of family lineage that will continue to just keep going through American politics. And when we think about his inauguration coming up, there's a few interesting things I've taken note of. That it's been moved to inside now. They're no longer doing it
Mm-hmm.
outside. It's been a lot of justification just geopolitically saying, there's threats against his life. We can't have another assassination attempt, yada, yada, yada. But it's
Cold
reminiscent of
outside.
it's reminiscent of something, and also his time away from presidency. He had this situation in which he had huge following, his huge support. Somehow Biden wins, and he's on the out for a while, and now he's suddenly back. This is like reminiscent of a hidden season that you see within orchestrated messianic expectations of their Messiah, their savior coming through. And this triumphant return of Trump, ironically, is an inversion of like a millennial kingdom, a reign, a golden age, which he himself has blatantly said it's going to be a golden era, golden age for America. So we've got all these kind of talking points that you can see through scripture and non-canonical extra biblical texts occurring through this. And when we talk about his inauguration, it's being moved to the Capitol building, the Rotunda, if I'm correct. I'll have to double
Mm-hmm.
check that, but that's my understanding from what I saw. A place in which George Washington, one of the founding fathers, is depicted as a Greco-Roman demigod. This is a capital which is built on pagan styles and belief systems. A
Mm-hmm.
place in which there's effigies of Venus, Neptune, Mercury, all these Greco-Roman gods, and it becomes this apotheosis type of a deification for Trump then to be in this centralized place. There's so much occultic symbolism in this space. It's wild. Like even the word inauguration comes from the Latin word inaugura, which means to approve in the basis of an omen.
Mm-hmm.
Trump just screams like the Antichrist at this point, and I don't know how the people don't see it. They're inaugurating, approving this man via the basis of omens in a place that's surrounded by paganistic gods and symbols. It's
Yeah.
a wild, wild place to be.
And being the first president to do it indoors, because as Tom Horn was covering, he says like the phallus of Nimrod, but then the capital is supposed to represent the womb. So the fact that he's
Mhm.
going inside the quote unquote womb, proverbially, and then Apollo emerges from that. I'm like, Apollo, Apollyon, Revelation 9:11 happens to be that same verse, 45, 47, 4 and 5. You get 9:11. We do our voting in the month of November, which means 9. It is the 11th month, 9/11. It's 365 out of a year, 3 plus 6, 9, 6 plus 5, 11. At a certain point, it's like, guys, there's something definitely with that number. And the fact he's having a parade the day before, a victory parade on 119, is an inverted 9/11. At a certain point, it's like we could be wrong, but aren't the coincidences kind of over coinciding? Where it's at the point where you should be like, yeah, maybe there is something there. Just something. I don't know what it is, but I'm willing to hear you out. But no, nobody wants to look at that because they don't want to acknowledge that America is incredibly pagan. I think that's the scariest part, and they don't realize what it is. What Satanism ultimately is not we don't get rid of God. We merge. That's the scariest thing because Satan means set apart, but because we're merging, we don't even see that. It's like, oh, we can't be of the world at the same time. No, 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 no. So if the Pharisees weren't able to see who Christ was during their time, how are we supposed to know what Antichrist is in our time? I'm finding an interesting parallel right there.
It's a strange position to kind of be in because a lot of the occultic school followers that may not even be Christian are very
Mm-hmm.
open about what the symbols mean, what they're representative of, and how these players aren't necessarily all on the same side, air quotes. They might be inspired or under the guidance of one entity, but they've kind of been in this vying control, almost like gangland war with each other for many generations. And the quick go to is the number of democratic or New World Order people that aren't going to be at this inauguration. And I've been hearing a lot of whisperings from the Q folks and the MAGA Republicans that say they don't want to go there because they know Trump's going to arrest them at the inauguration, or they know that there's going to be an attempt on Trump's life and they don't want to be in the firing line. And I'm just like, well, maybe they're not going because they know they've been outcompeted by a more powerful evil entity. And these symbols that they throw out there, they're like gang signs that you find in Detroit, New York, any city with high crime rate. They tag their areas, Bloods,
Yes.
Crips, MS-13. He's throwing out all these symbols, and they're going, "Uh-oh, yeah, okay, Trump is going to be our dark lord and savior for the golden age. Better fall in line." They
Mm-hmm.
know because they're in the same mechanism or sphere of influence. They've just been outcompeted by the new shiny Antichrist. And I think a lot of times they try to prop themselves up and manifest, and I hate using that word, themselves to be the Antichrist because that's how they try to bring about their end times or their idea of salvation is they put the things in place based off their playbook, hoping it's going to stick. And we've seen that throughout history. There's been multiple historical figures that could fit the role of Antichrist, but it hasn't quite stuck because it hasn't been the time for it. What are your thoughts on that?
Correct. Well, thank you, Drew. There are so many dual prophecies, whereas like Nero was an antichrist. What was it, the guy after Alexander the Great when his empire split up, that they called him an antichrist with the sacrificing of the pig on the altar and stuff like that. So there's already antichrists throughout history. Napoleon, he tried to negotiate peace in Israel Palestine region back in the 1812, right? So that was almost like 200 years, 100 something years before Trump came on the scene. I do think they've always tried, they've always attempted. Even with America's Civil War, they were planning on splitting that between a Rothschild and somebody else if it had it split. So the plans are always adaptable and interchangeable. And that's the thing. When one of them sticks, though, great. We finally got what we wanted. And I think this is what people don't understand when they're trying to grasp the conspiracy theory thing. They don't exactly have a yes, this is it moment. They keep making attempts to have it happen. And unfortunately, Mr. Trump is fitting more than one of the categories of he fits this in the Bible, he fits that in the Bible, even though they've tried to create all their prophecies based off of maybe the Bible, whether it was their text, whatever, what have you, because they somehow still think they can slay God, but they haven't had a figure that can do that, nor the technology to do that. We are now on the cusp of doing that, and I'll shut up after this. When you're looking at Nebuchadnezzar's statue in the Empire of Iron and Clay, gold, think of, Babel. That's when we knew how to do all this stuff. Silver, we're getting a little, you keep going all the way down. By the time you get to the Empire of Iron and Clay, if you're looking on the chakras or the Hermetic Kabbalah tree of life, the feet represent Mars. And I was going, woo, Mars, isn't that interesting? And we have a certain guy with Baphomet X symbols all over every platform he has. And, going to be the conqueror of Mars, according to Werner von Braun from 1952. So it's just making me chuckle. I was going, well, when you start understanding what their elements are, you don't look at it from a political lens. You start seeing it from a biblical prophecy lens. And I think that's kind of the rift that's occurring is people are looking at political policies and they're not looking at biblical prophecies. And that's the thing is you're either of the world or you're looking for your groom to return. I think that's kind of what we've come down to. And some people, they don't know how to distinguish between the two and they're paranoid or they see somebody flash this or this and they automatically, oh, they have to be in the club because I remember this other conspiracy page told me this. Yes, it is an occult gesture, but you have to understand not everybody understands what it means. Some people literally think it just means okay still. Come on, relax.
And that's been a big thing. You're right. Anyone who's been caught via a snapshot or a screenshot of making a gesture, oh, they're part of the club. Look, he's covered his eye. The dude was scratching
Right.
himself. Like, come on.
Again, that's why I always say, add it up. Don't just go boom right immediately. Add it up. Go like, okay, he did this. All right, he's affiliated with this person. He's affiliated with that club. Okay, yeah, it was a yes. It does it. But we've have such a some impulsive reactionary thing that it's like I always think I don't know why I think of this, but it always reminds me of the verse when with Mary, and Mary pondered all these things and kept them in her heart. Ponder some things once in a while, folks. You don't need to go all out and say everything that you know or see. Just once in a while, ponder it, then come to a conclusion. That's why I wait sometimes. Everybody's like, "What do you think about what's going on today?" I'm giving it a week or so until I accumulate enough data to make my own decision. So, shush.
And this is the big challenge at the moment. I'm hearing a lot of people within, say, the Christian community that would say it's speculation. You're connecting dots and you're speculating and drawing your own conclusion that aligns with what your belief system already is at the start. I wouldn't say it's speculation as opposed to interpretation. It's how we interpret the signs and symbols of the world, the historical context, the events, the actions of these people, and how they align with biblical scripture. And that's how we see things. This is how these things were revealed to us. We actually have to go out and look for these things. And they will become aware to those people when they do notice them. The interesting thing for Trump and the idea of the Antichrist and becoming known to the world, the big one I get from people is he's not loved by everyone.
Yeah.
Half the world hates him, half the world loves him. Like at the moment, yeah, you're right. But it doesn't really give us an exact timeline of how long it takes for the Antichrist to create a new world order, one world government, world peace, this whole jazz. If the start of it is a North American bloc, a time in which Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal, Mexico even is incorporated into this American Union, and that becomes hugely successful economically, hugely successful culturally, endures a golden age, air quotes, that then becomes the template for the rest of the world, for other kings to step up and take their place and pay homage to, the beast system, right? So Trump doesn't have to be the Antichrist overtly straight away. He could be just setting the stage ready to reveal it. Or I'll even put it out there, there could be someone that's behind the scenes who is the Antichrist that will step out after this, after the 10 kings are revealed. But like you said, there are a lot of coincidi or a lot of elements that point towards Trump, at least symbolically at this point, being a very big contender for that.
Well, I mean, he's exchequer of the Vatican and World Banks, which is a huge thing for me. And then I did like that 18-minute compilation of all this Bitcoin stuff because I know people are cynical. So I'm like, you know what? I'll throw it all in one spot. So you can cross-reference being like, okay, I can see where you're, And again, that's the stuff that's shadow banned the most. So for me, it's like, well, why would you shadow ban something if there's nothing to worry about? And the fact that he's pushing this Bitcoin thing that has on the bottom right hand corner 666. Now, it doesn't have to be specifically Bitcoin, as you said before. It could be a Phoenix coin, but it's off the elements of what was the foundation of the Bitcoin, you know? And I think this is the thing is that folks are expecting I think that they have so much of a a get out before the tribulation expectation that they're somewhat lackadaisical in trying to determine who the Antichrist might be, or they try to shrug it off, or okay, maybe it is him, but we get out before it gets bad, so we don't really need to prep or plan, or And I'm finding that a little bit to be counterproductive because if we're about to go into this system and he might be the guy leading it as a UN citizen where he was born, makes him a United Nations citizen. Donald means world ruler. I mean, it's getting weirder and weirder. It's just like maybe really, because when you look into these things, you start going okay, and he's a businessman. And if you're going by his name etymology, it connects with Hermes, the originator of coinage. So and connecting that with AI, which possibly bringing back the spirits of Nephilim and all this stuff. I know you did a post and stuff like that on that, but for me, what I'm thinking is they're going to try to bring back the spirits of the Nephilim, which is Daemon, and put it into like this international possession grid, where if you accept the mark of the beast system solution, you end up becoming a vessel for demonic possession internationally. How that's all done, I don't want to know. I can surmise enough just from seeing what I'm seeing. But I'm seeing a lot of folks, they could easily get duped into it because it's just like, okay, so no more physical credit card, just put a little chip in my hand and that's it. Yeah.
It's so convenient.
Convenience. Why would you put something in your body that wasn't intended? And again, what was the jib jab? You're putting something in your body, but did you read the ingredients? No. They told me it was good for me though. So if they tell you it's monetarily good for you, because that's the thing. So let's say Trump pays off the national debt of America with Bitcoin, as he suggested. Oh, look, you beat the BRICS alliance, right? And then BRICS capitulates to this. Oh, I guess you got us on this. You tried to outsmart you, and you got us on it. And again, do people realize that they're being played with the? Oh, look over here. See how cool that was? Oh yeah. What if I had some of that? It's just like a salesman, dude. I think of like an old western. You have this little guy do a little soap opera on the side, and you're over here saying, if you want to have powers like this, text the elixir, and I guarantee you it will. That's what it feels like right now with this whole illusion that they're creating. And I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But again, looking at the Bible, I can see it, and I can see it very soon coming down the pike.
Well, it seems very Hegelian dialectic in say that I will go as far as say maybe the last 20 years. We've seen this, and I'm going to go political for a little bit, so just follow with me for a moment. We've seen this huge influx of socialist ideas, very left-leaning, progressive ideas within academia, medicine, government, the whole smorgasbord of ideas of human philosophy. And the pendulum has swung so far to the left that we've had this really big pushback into conservative ideals, right wing politics, and trying to push back against the insanity that we've seen. And
Mm-hmm.
that's given way for the likes of a Trump, a Malay, these popularists to come in and drive those ideas of getting back to conservative ideas, traditionalism, and push away from one world government. And BRICS was kind of like the globalist ideal of money, monetary systems. It's this coalition of all these different nations from around the world coming together. If Trump manages to bring out a Fed coin or a Phoenix coin that absolutely trounces that BRICS system, it's a win for small localized government, right? The nationalism
Mm-hmm.
of America. But we're seeing it quickly turn into the low end global control via those 10 kingdoms. Trump was very big about America first, and he's not even in the chair again. He's already talking about a North American Union. So
Yeah.
he's very quickly turned into this imperialistic idea of America becoming bigger, becoming stronger. And it's just the slow tiptoe to tyranny. It's the tiptoe into a one world government. They scared the absolute living crap out of the world with a one world order, very
Mm-hmm.
overtly, so that they could get people to willingly go along with nationalized democracy, which eventually
Yes.
would grow into these nation states and these 10 kingdoms. And I think if you see BRICS collapse under the pressure of a North American bloc that's financially and economically very strong, that would be replicated in the East, in Europe, in Australasia, and they would do their own thing. And they'll do the exact same thing. The template's there. He set the precedents, the rest of the world will follow. And that's how we enter into these 10 kingdoms. Economic
Hmm.
zones. And how long have we heard from the likes of a Joe Rogan or a Alex Jones, economic blocks and zones and regional areas? That's a tiptoe into the New World Order. We're dead against it. Well, as soon as it's their guy, Trump, they're all for it. The amount of
Hmm.
truthers and conspiratorial minded content creators who are fully on board with this whole North American bloc, it astounds me that they don't have the same ability to think critically about their guy. I'm fine for people to have their political leanings and their ideas of how they see the world, but if you don't hold your own side, your own team to the same ideals, you're absolutely failing with your own moral compass.
Dude, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm seeing is that it is the Trojan horse. It's like a Judas goat Trojan horse merger. And because you're putting so much hopium faith on this thing, it's gotta work. Because I was just watching this other thing when Obama was planning on taking Greenland, all the conservatives are like, no, that'd be a bad idea. You trigger off this and kick off World War III, and Russia would be all upset. Now Trump says it, and in a nationalist sense, they're like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'd fight for it. It's like, what? How come he didn't mention this pre-campaign? He mentions it right after he gets in, and I'm over here going, that sounds like a very dictatorial move. You're basically the H guy, Adolf, and saying we're going to cross the Rhine. No, nothing to worry about. But if you're the people across the Rhine, you're over here going, "Did you do that in World War One?" And I don't think people are grasping it as that in a way because you're so worried about the boogeyman over there that they've created, which again, let's face it, to get to America, you have to go across an entire ocean. Then you'd have to set up a beachhead. Your blockchain supply is going to be a freaking pain in the butt because if you're going through Alaska, you got all this snow to deal with half the time. You got to go through all of Canada, which is a lot of territory, before you finally reach the US. Or, like I said, you have the whole ocean to get across, which again, we have so many bases and whatnot, we could probably cause enough of a problem so you can't really get over here right away. Try to go East Coast, you have to go all the way over Europe, and then it just doesn't make sense. So the only way America dies is if we implode. And that is what they're doing is we're going to accept digital communism under the form of Christian nationalism and not even see it coming because we've been so scared about look over there while we're getting stabbed in the back.
And they're going to pitch it, it's not a death, it's like a rebirth. The America of the old has been rebirthed into this North American Union or kingdom. And it's quite astounding, even from the Canadian perspective. I know they've done it really hard with, say, the last 10, 15 years under Trudeau, very left wing
Mm,
socialist ideals. What happened during COVID? But there's so many Canadians who have gone, yep, I want to be an American, which astounds
mm,
me because there's a cultural and ethnic and a sense of identity that is very different from Americans. Like they're
yes.
Canadians for a reason, and they're ready to throw in their cultural identity, their sense of who they are, to become a part of something bigger. And that seems like it's the save me, daddy, I need help type of approach. They can't help themselves, and they're willing to throw it all away because they've done some hard times. Well, God forbid we really do go through true hard times, because how many people would capitulate under such circumstances?
Dude, yeah. And again, not that I'm into national identity or patriotism, but what you're talking about, the hypocrisy or like you're willing to just sell yourself for, oh, please somebody save me, big daddy government save me, which is literally what they're doing. They're instead of saying like I can't wait for the Lord's return or I think I read some poll it was like 75% of Canadians are fairly pro becoming American and I'm like, why? Have you seen what our country has been? Say Trump gets out and we get another Biden Kamala individual in there. Are you not freaked out that that might happen now to you guys in some way, shape, or form? And the fact that people aren't thinking like that really makes me scratch my head going, so it doesn't really matter what your flag, what your nation or country is, just as long as somebody's fixing the monetary problems that you have. And what I'm seeing potentially when they have this Meha Maha, whatever you want to call it, make America healthy again, what's that going to do? oh, now you guys are all fighting about Kellogg's. Some of us have been knowing about this for like 10 years. It's like, man. But what are they going to do? They're going to say, okay, we are going to take that off the shelves. What's that going to do? That means the good stuff is on the shelves, but that creates a higher price range because now more people want to get the good stuff because the bad stuff's now being exposed and taken off the shelves. So that creates a food shortage, which means what? Inflation again with groceries, which right now it's already like 80, $90 for me, and I'm getting the same stuff I always get. It used to be about $44. Now it's 90 something. So now you're going to have a shortage of the good stuff skyrocketing because, oh, we're making it healthy again. The problem's not getting better. It's going to get worse. And now you want to add on 3 additional continents probably to us because it will fix it because we're tariffing the bad guys as opposed to our own people. It's like that's still not going to fix it because whatever I get back with taxes is going to go back to trying to get groceries in my freaking cupboard. I see it, but I don't think people are quite going to get it until after 2 or 3 years. But again, what does the Bible say? The fruit prices are going to go up. And if we're going to war, what does that mean? That has a ripple effect with economies and trade, which means that's going to hit somebody like you. Like I was talking to another one of the Australians. I said, you guys get a lot of stuff imported. So that's going to mess around with you guys.
Yeah,
That's just one example.
we produce more food than we can actually eat, and we export to. We're the food bowl of Southeast Asia and China. We produce more food
Really?
than we can ever need. We could be totally independent, but all the things we import are not necessities. They're plasma screen TVs, they're cars, they're electronics, all the things you don't need we import, and that's why it's so costly to buy like stuff. Like keeping up with the
Yes.
Joneses, having the brand new car, the new television, the new car, sofa set, all that type of thing is very expensive in Australia comparative to America because we don't make any of that. We have to import it.
Wow.
But you're right. There's this idea that the economic woes are going to be solved, so I'm happy to jump on board, or the social woes are going to be solved. We're not going to see the wokeness. And this is a big talking point. Trump's
Right.
the
Right.
destroyer of woke culture. Yeah, great. But at the same time, the powers you're giving him are very authoritarian in the same aspect. So you're willing to forego your own sovereignty and freedom because that authoritarianism is going against what you deem to be bad. But what happens when he turns his sights on you? And I think this is where it's really interesting that this new proposed immigration bill for America that's going through, that's used to tighten and strengthen American borders, the ability to allow deportations at mass scale, which has been promising, this
Mhm.
ability to give ICE this huge amount of wielding power they've never had before. But there's unconfirmed reports that this ability gives people, ICE agency ability to arrest those jumping turnstiles and charge them with equivalent powers to what someone convicted of murder would have.
Are you serious?
I am. I saw this today. It's unconfirmed, so I'll give it that caveat. But imagine all these powers that have been pushed into this, that it gives a border control agency, essentially, power to come down on citizens. Naturalized citizens, people have been in there
Turnstile?
yeah. But that's just one idea. Like, that's one thing that's been leaked. How many other caveats and things are built into this bill that allow authoritarian controls of naturalized American citizens? And that's going to be the danger. Once you start to give those overwhelming powers to bodies of the government, and that government becomes a mini empire in itself via a North American bloc, it has to go full authoritarian. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
peaceful in that sense. And like, you're a kid, you jump over the turnstile, you want to catch a train. Oops, sorry, you're locked in prison like a murderer, and you're away for like 20 to life. Sorry.
Might get the chair, kid.
Yeah. Now you'll think twice about jumping that turnstile.
Dude, that is messed up. That is third world country crap right there. And they're saying that's a good thing. I'm like, that's not good. That's tyranny with a capital T.
But people cheer it on because, there might be MS-13 members, illegals from the border that are getting kicked out within the first few months. People be cheering, going, yeah, that's awesome. I love these powers. At the same time, Uncle Bob down the road got 3 months for jaywalking, something ridiculous like that. These are
You
the
don't even
types of
see it.
powers, and you don't even see it because the media and the news will be pumping the positives of protecting Americans' borders. And this is
Right.
the age we're going into.
And as Elon said, he's going to be the George Soros of the right, and he's planning. I think I heard MSPC. He's planning on buying. He might step in and intervene with the TikTok thing because Trump was for it, quote unquote. So what I'm laughing at is when you're looking at World War II Germany, I'm seeing a lot of elements of like, oh, look, they got rid of the gypsies. Yeah, well, they didn't like the gypsies anyway, blah, blah, blah. And then they got rid of these group, and it's like, nah, we didn't really care about them either. And eventually they can keep expanding and that net to take in whatever they want. And unless you stand up in opposition now, when it comes to you, you have no resistance force. And because you've been supporting them so die-heartedly, you're not going to see anything coming because you're always they're training us to always look at the positive. Look at the positive. No, and I think that's the thing is that government is Stockholm syndrome at the end of the day. It is codependent Stockholm syndrome where I need you guys to fix it for me with your legislation and policies. Whereas the early church, it was, what are you doing? What do you mean? You're not going to temple anymore. This guy over here with the idol making business is losing money because we're not buying his idols anymore. How are you guys converting an empire without drawing a sword? Is this a philosophy? No, it's a faith. That is how Christians are supposed to act, but instead, we've literally, it feels like Esau, right? We've given up our birthright for a bowl of soup because we didn't want the promise that was going to come at the end of the day. It might have been a little bit later, a little further down the line, but the promise did come into fruition. But a lot of us are quick to just pass the buck and say, give me whatever I want right now, because I want to be happy right now until I get the tribulation, the rapture extraction. Really? That's your game plan? Dude, I'm telling you, I like talking politics, but I really hate the aspects of what happens after with politics. You know what I'm saying? I like observing it, but participating in it, I don't understand the fascination. I went to a couple of Turning Point USA rallies, and some of the people on stage, dude, I said, you just ended that with a Zeke Heil, we would have been all set, because that's literally what it felt like. It felt like, okay, the person before you maybe, but you're kind of a little, but the crowd's cheering and excited, and I'm over here, and now you're getting a guy that's amping up the heat, and I'm going, that's not making any other sensors go off here, no? Oh, and I'll throw it back to you after this. And now while I was at that event, I was walking around at some of the booths, and I stumbled onto one particular TV booth, and it was a Christian TV booth. I was kind of in a rush to get into the next session, and I said, all right, I'll take one of your little tickets and whatnot. And I gave him my phone number, and I said, all right, you can text me or whatever, and I'll find out what you're all about. Come to find out, these people were connected with Kenneth Copeland. And I'm like, well, that tells me all that I need to know. What are you doing at Turning Point USA, Charlie?
I think that like this whole idea of politics, it's really the government idea, like controlling the mind. It's very true because politics seems to take over the cognitive physical side of the spiritual war, and we're completely ignoring the part of the soul that's being fought over because we're so
Yeah.
focused and hyper focused on the here and the now or the next 4 years. And
Mm,
you mentioned something before that's akin to the quote that happened with communism, but I'm going to give a new age spin to it for the North American bloc, maybe the West in general.
yeah.
First, they came for the illegal immigrants, and I did nothing. Then they
Mm,
came for the Hamas sympathizers, and I did nothing. Then they came for the gender ideologues, and I did nothing. Then they came for the communists, and I did nothing. Then they came for the Christians, and there's no one else to help me. That's going to be the
yeah.
situation. What's going to be? We'll be the
Yes.
last on the last head on the chopping block, but they will come for us because we will have willfully sat by, watched our so-called enemies or people we view as not having the same ideals as us taken away, and the majority of people will cheer that on.
Mm-hmm.
People forget the human side of things. Just because someone's political or cultural views don't necessarily align with you doesn't mean you don't step in to protect them from full authoritarian controlled structures. And you mentioned pre World War II, what happened there. Same thing with the USSR. We're starting to see that echo of history come into our modern day, and we're getting a very polished, very almost media infused version of that, but it's occurring the same way. Everyone's so happy that Trump's going to go in, drain the swamp, get rid of the wokeism. They're not recognizing the target's eventually going to be on their head too. And it seems to be coming very quickly. And I think it's going to happen so fast, it'll make people's heads spin because they don't realize that it happened.
Well, it says Babylon falls in an hour. I truly think that's going to be America in a way. I kind of hope so. Because as an American, I have the right to say this. You guys suck. I see how arrogant you are, how smug you are. I had Dude, I was sitting in a restaurant once, and the guy had a special needs dog, and these people from the Middle East were walking by in their hijabs or whatever, and he says, "Well, yeah, my dog was trained in the military, it'd be chasing those kind of people." And I immediately just was like, "Excuse me?" Like I put my work down. Like, what are you talking about? How sick that is to have that mentality that we're not racist, we're not a racist nation. But the minute you see somebody of that culture, you automatically are programmed to think, yeah, they deserve to get. And I'm like, no, no, that's not acceptable behavior. I don't care where you are. And as a Christian, especially, it doesn't mean when you are going over to talk to the prostitute or publican that you're converting to become like them. You're just saying, hey, let me hang out with you for a second. We're going to chit chat. Maybe I can rub off some influence on you in contrast, and you can follow me. And I'm not saying followers as in like modern day, but like Christ. Why would I want to follow you like somebody like Zacchaeus? Why would I want to give a double portion of everything I've stolen? Because being with you, you gave me such an impression that I'm a scumbag. And I don't want to do that anymore because you're awesome. And that's what I want to emulate. I don't see Christians doing that. Instead, what I see them is they put on the mask of cultural identity, which again, political identity, identity politics, it's the same thing. That's what politics are. That's what political parties are. And I don't think people are realizing it is that that is what they harnessed off of. Is when you lose your identity in Christ, which is supposed to be set apart, you become part of the world, and that gives them more energy and fuel on the fire to do what they're going to do. Which I was pleased to see in this Americans' elections. Allegedly, 32 million Americans that were Christian decided not to participate in this election. Now, before I throw it back to you, the other thing I've noted with this Christian movement, with the influencers, when you look at Jordan Peterson, he's now wearing a vest with the Catholic Virgin Mary on it, or a little suit jacket. When you look at Candace Owens, Catholic conservative. When you look at Russell Brand, Catholic baptism and all this stuff. I'm noticing a little bit of a trend of we're going back to conservative values, but a lot of these people that are getting those gears going, they're all Catholic affiliated. Now, any Christian that's worth their salts and understands history, that should be a huge red flag, because if that is connected with Mystery Babylon the Great ideology wise, what gave us what we have, shouldn't that be a little bit of a ding 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 of wait a minute, if they're agreeing with this, is that a good thing for me to agree with? Where do I say I'm gonna pause and reflect on that, because if you're agreeing with me, that might be a bad thing because I know what you identify as.
Yeah, I think there's been this, and I don't think denominations have certainly helped in Christianity. We've got thousands of denominations because we've got all our own interpretations. We see the word and we interpret it differently. We look at the world around us, and God gives us guidance on our path.
Yeah.
But it's been really weaponized, I've noticed, within, say, the past at least 5 to 6 years, in that we've seen this resurgence in both Catholicism and Orthodoxy. And you see the ortho chads, these young guys who don't have a girlfriend, don't have a wife, have been guided on a path to orthodoxy, and they're going really, really hard on traditional Christianity. And I saw a post that I'd like to mention that it was a picture of a woman, a Christian girl, and she was covered, had head coverings, very traditional, early era Christian clothing. And he said, we had our women covered before the Muslims, they copied us. And a young girl commented on the post, what makes you think I would like to do that? And his response was, who said you've got a choice? Now, this is the danger that we're moving into. This idea of identity politics has weaseled its way into faith, where we had this huge reformation within Christianity, where we had non-denominational Christians start to come out of denominational houses, finding their own
Yes.
path, this resurgency of trying to find a true individual relationship with Christ. And now we're being pushed back into the boxes. They're luring us away into this identity politics via faith. And the danger with
Yes.
this is it correlates so well with traditional Western values. And these Western values that are being pumped as a counter to the woke one world order, socialist government type of agenda, it fits so well with these 10 kingdoms, because you get Europe, which will be one, essentially an Anglo-European sphere, North America, which will be a very anglicized version of that, Australasia, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa is a part of that kingdom, very Anglosphere places. it's building this setting of where I see a lot of the young National Socialist guys who are very ethno-minded about their race. They can then tap into that. They see that as a good thing because they feel as if racially they're getting this ability to come back to something they value. But it's all a con. All of these things are being brought together to get ultimate control because they're consolidating all these little individual groups, which would have been a challenge to the status quo of what they're trying to bring about. And they're unifying them under the idea of identity, both religious, ethnically, racially, culturally, into these kingdoms. And that's how it's going to work. And these kingdoms are on a fast track to occur. And I don't see it slowing down. We know that a lot of these occultic, New World Order, One World Government conspiracy theories have 2025 as the real starting point, and things ramp up very quickly and then slow down as we reach 2030. We're on the precipice, people. I can't tell you how much 2025 I believe is going to reveal a lot of people's true colors very quickly. And we're going to see a lot of flip-flopping from decades of having one position to suddenly flipping on a dime. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen with big talking heads. One I'm noticing in particular on the Joe Rogan podcast. Traditionally, Joe Rogan is very agnostic, maybe atheist in his thinking, very scientifically minded. He's not against a creator by any means. Recently, he's had a lot of air quotes Christian guests on. Wes Huff, Mel Gibson. I could very, very easily see Joe Rogan coming out within the next year as being a born again Catholic or Orthodox, and his whole talking points pivoting towards that identity politics. That's ultimately going to help the establishment build and grow one of these kingdoms.
Dude, that's just the thing. I was reading something the other day where it was talking about Rogan in general, and it was indicating that because he has such like a mass following, they put him on top of the podcast thing, and they pushed him in particularly because they understood that there was already a bit of a movement of people trying to walk away from mainstream. They put up somebody like Bill Hicks. I'm not going to say his other name because I don't think that's accurate. They put somebody like him up to create the poster boy of, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Just so when you refer to it, it's like, oh, the nut job guy. Intentionally so. And it's a funnel system of identity where it's over here saying, oh, look, and that's again who you follow. It's like statistics of gullibility. We know what you think, we know how likely you are to go in this angle, in this direction of thinking. When you were bringing up the thing about who said you're going to have a choice, that was immediately making me think of The Handmaid's Tale, which I know a lot of people have brought up before. And I was doing a show the other day, but I said, yes, I think, I know this is it's going to sound controversial, but hear me out. What it used to be is that men would have kind of like a standard for another man, right? If you're going to become part of this family, we're going to vet you. Or you're beating up my little sister. Are you flirting with my little sister? I'm going to beat you up if you do anything wrong with her. There was this sense of standard of identity, right? Of expectation of a man. It was competitive, right? I want you to reach a standard of being better than the other person because that's how you keep the family name going, right? So in a sense, a man kind of makes the decision, or they kind of vet who's worthy, and the woman finally makes the choice. And that is parallel with the Bible, not what patriarchy, where with the cup ceremony of communion is like, I'm choosing the son that you're giving me. I'm choosing
She has to
this
accept.
relation. Yes, but you have the right just as equally to say no. But now what they've done with feminism is that the woman determines what a man is. And a woman is a woman. That's not a diss. That's just you're a woman. You don't know what it is to be a man. And because we're now having women determine what is a suitable partner, men are kind of losing what it is for their identity because they don't have any standard of comparison. What am I supposed to look up to? So they look to an Andrew Tate, who, by the way, I didn't even know who it was until he got arrested. So I thank God for that. I was over here like, what the heck is this guy? And then when I did see him, I was like, people follow this Joker? or in some of these other guys. And I'm chuckling, dude, because as opposed to discipling what it is as a Christian to raise a family, now we're getting people going to the like the extreme orthodox or whatever, as, oh, it's like a dictator husband, as opposed to, no, I'm a man who leads, but I do it by the standards of God. Whereas the other one's saying, no, you have the right to do it, and beat him around, blah blah blah. Whether they say that or not, if you're truly thinking that she doesn't have the choice to choose you, and you're going to put that upon her, am I making sense with where I'm going with that?
Yeah, you do,
Okay,
because I think
okay,
it helps explain a lot of. There is a big issue within society for young men. There's a lot of young men who they do follow the Andrew Tates, or they see the degeneracy that's occurred within the world because of third wave feminism, and how detached the role of men and women is, and how we don't quite understand our roles in society, marriage, and under faith. That they become these incels, these young guys who aren't getting any, they don't have a
yeah,
girlfriend, they don't date. So they fall into those traps of honeypots of personalities. But that's been pivoted now to the faith, and it's been pivoted to denominational faith, not find your
yes,
journey with Christ yourself. It's you have to identify with something. You need to wear a certain hat. You have to be an ortho Chad. You have to be a giga Catholic. Like these internet style ideas of what it means to be Christian, right?
right,
So much
right,
so that they scream for having a theocracy. They want America to be a theocratic state, a state under God, because that's what the forefathers intended. Not really. The forefathers were a mix of Masonics, um, occultists, and British hierarchy who wanted their own kingdom, and they succeeded. They got their
mhm,
own kingdom in the end. And we've got this weird situation where these young guys, they don't quite know what it means to be a man, their role in society. They're so angry at the way how the role of women has been subverted and used, that they're looking for anything to help them. And that's how they fall for these Andrew Tates, these people that are very big personalities. You can see why they've
right,
got a big draw card. And young guys who don't know any better, they fall for that. And the Handmaid's Tale, I didn't even think of when I saw this young Christian girl wearing the head coverings and the traditional garb. But people forget these are clothes that people wore 2,000 plus years ago.
mhm,
It's just because fashion includes maybe shorts or short sleeve shirts, things like that, doesn't mean it's inherently evil. Fashion and clothing does change a little bit. Yes, a lot of it might be influenced by third wave feminism and sexualization, but
mhm,
there's no need to fall for those ideas of you have to control a woman 100%. Your
right,
role as a
right,
man headship, even in the family, it's to guide and lead. You don't be a
right,
leader by controlling. That's authoritarian in nature, which is ironically what they're trying to pitch to us through this theocratic ethno nation states that they're trying to build. And I'm going to give you another example. There was a post by Postmodern Theology, which is a very big Australian account in the realm of Christianity. And he shared a video of Mar-a-Lago with Christians leading a prayer with Donald Trump. And it was very American-esque type church, a lot of arm waving and
yeah,
chanting. Seemed very Baptist in nature. That's just the American style of churches. Bit more robust than the conservative Anglo sphere Commonwealth type approach. And he said, "What do you think of this?" And I put a post up there. I have a lot of concerns. This is Christian nationalism that's going to be weaponized to usher in atrocities in the name of God, aka Das Volt. And
mhm,
I was absolutely hammered by people saying, no, we have to be a theocratic nation. We save the world, we save Canada, we're so back. A lot of those identity politics talking points that have been infused into the faith. And I'm just shocked by how many people are falling for it.
mhm. I think that's the thing, dude, is that without realizing it, they think they're getting control back, but what they're really doing is cultivating a nation of narcissists. And the arrogance is passing the blasphemy radar. So that, again, if Antichrist is supposed to be counter to Christ, not having compassion, being boastful, all these things, I'm seeing that with one individual, and especially with the blasphemy. But because you are not cultivating that in yourself of what Christ is, that's probably why your meter is not going or something off with this. Even like I said, when I went to vote the second time, dude, I felt like I was going to a whorehouse. It literally felt like, oh, this is so dirty. What if somebody sees me here? That's literally like that's the best way to define standing in line. The first time was my first time ever. So for me, the fact that I had that, I thank God all the time. I said, thank you for putting that conviction on me, even if I wasn't quite understanding fully what it was. And now I'm laughing because I'm like, voted for him twice. Now that I stand against him, I am against the country. I am anti-American. I am a liberal. I voted for this person or that person. And it's making me literally like, the more I step away from all these things, it makes me more and more confident that it's like, yeah, I think I make the right decision, because you guys tell me there's freedom of choice, there's freedom of identity to become my own person. But the minute I stand up for myself and set apart, or I stand up for Christ as opposed to your country, or I try to separate the two, oh boy, I'm the villain. I'm the bad guy. I deserve to be put on a stake, or I'm the stupidest person in the world. Reading said comments like you had, but a lot of them are F bombs and this thing. And I'm like, okay, so counterpoint, what's this? F bomb, F bomb, F bomb, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you don't really have anything. You're really just it, did you see the latest video that came out with what's that guy with the dreadlocks? He's got tattoos over his face. He sings a lot of conservative songs.
Not too sure. A rapper, I take it.
Yeah, he's a rapper. He just did a
Yeah.
thing with Roseanne Barr.
Can't say it's my cup of tea, but I think I know the
I
person you're
think you
talking
know what I'm
about.
talking. He
Yeah.
just did one with that, and it's like Daddy's Home. I'm like, Daddy's Home? Big Daddy government? Like, dude, like 1 minute you're telling me the problem is we're dealing with the liberal left because they're the problem, and because they're all lapped up in their identity politics. But then you're literally calling a politician daddy? I think you guys need to see Freud or whatever, because you guys are getting into the nutsy cuckoo where you tell me it's TDS. I'm like, you got a mental STD for this guy. I don't know how to define this for you. It's just, yeah, dude, it's sickening. And I got kicked off of TikTok for trolling Trump. They wouldn't let me post that video, and I've been banned permanently. So China apparently doesn't like Trump. China, allegedly.
Allegedly. And this is the danger we fall into. Like you mentioned, if you deviate on even the smallest thing, you're instantly outed from that identity politics. And it's even more dangerous when it becomes theocratic identity, because then it's under the guidance and the power of God, right? They
Mm,
interpret what they're doing as being justified, being moral, being of the faith. And this is how you end up with being labeled an apostate, being labeled a someone who's a sinner, being labeled a person who's against the faith. You are very quickly turned into the enemy. We saw it in politics very quickly. If you disagreed on one small thing, oh, you must vote left wing or you're a
right.
communist. No, I just believe, people should have the right to, bodily autonomy. Oh, no, no, you're
Hmm.
left wing. You do it in the space of faith and spiritual warfare. That's how you end up with Salem witch burnings in a
Yes.
modern age. This is a real
Yeah.
danger we've seen with theocracies around the world over history. A lot of horrible atrocities are done in the name of God, which I think is the ultimate affront to Christ. Because if he's looking down at us, chimping out like the animals we are, if we're stuck in this cult of personality mindset, committing horrendous things, what are we but Pharisees?
Yeah.
If that's what I would almost describe a lot of modern day Christians at this point to, aren't open minded or willing to have open, genuine discourse around the faith. As soon as you pigeonhole someone as being something other than your theocratic identity, you've become a Pharisee. You're
Yes.
doing the exact same thing they did to Christ. No, no, this is not how our faith is managed. This is not how we conduct business within the church. You're doing it wrong. You're an apostate. That's what the
Yes.
majority of us as Christians are now. And I don't see how we can come out of that in the current system, especially going into these 10 kingdoms where it is fully authoritarian, it's fully integrated, the technology's there to allow ultimate surveillance, ultimate control, laws are being passed which ultimately destroy all your rights, but it's again being cheered on by the applause of the people who were supposedly fighting against this as little as 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Well said. Well said. And I I think part of me, as I said in the beginning, I kind of want things to hit the fan for maybe those who are kind of afraid to step forward, but they're kind of sitting on the fence looking over, going, I don't know, but they see, they're too afraid to come forward at the moment, but they're seeing the stuff that, somebody like myself that I post. And I see those people. I understand. But at the same time, when some of the stuff that I've hinted at, or some of other people have hinted at, When that starts unfolding and you see it in real time, are you going to be brave enough to be a Daniel in Babylon, to keep praying even though all the legislation is going against what you do just normally? Or are you going to say, yeah, I'll sell out my family. Yeah, I'll sell out my friends, which the Bible speaks of. It's going to betray friends and family, right? And when you were just talking about we're doing all this stuff in God's name, that sounds very eerily similar when he was saying, like, Lord, Lord, didn't we do all this in your name? Depart from me, I never knew you. That's what I'm hearing. He's not talking to the agnostics and atheists. He's saying those who thought they were followers. And it's like, no, I never sanctioned dropping a BOMB on another person. I never said pick up a gun for this cause or that cause. What I tell you, my kingdom's not of this world. Oh, ooh. Patriotism right in the guts right there. So I don't think people get it, dude. And I think because they don't get it is it's the same thing. I think this might be the problem. I'm not sure if it's over there in Australia, but in America, we created as well the boogeyman of it's kind of loose when we're saying, oh, they're a Satanist. Okay. So they like the bad guy, right? So I watched the interview where interview with two Satanists. One of the guy was missing his ear or whatever. And funny enough, the guy who was interviewing them he wears an Anglican Catholic church thing now. And carries a crux. I was like, he's no better. But when I was hearing them answer some of the questions, dude, I was like, yeah, he's actually kind of right. If a man doesn't work, he doesn't deserve bread. I was like, okay, I can see where he's going with that. And I was understanding, but I wasn't not agreeing as in I want to convert. It was understanding as in, okay, I see your logic of how you got there. What we're not teaching Christians is how do I counteract what he's saying? The other guys are saying, well, why would you do that? That's just Satanism. There's no concrete of what they actually believe foundation, or how if you approach one, how do you do compare contrast like we should be being taught in school. You're taught compare contrast, and then you have to write out your own argument of why you think there are pros and there are cons, whether you agree or disagree. We don't teach that, and instead we just say the bad man, that's a witch. That's a witch. Well, what is a witch? Well, they're doing stuff with Satan. Well, what does that entail? What's your evidence? Because you're just throwing out accusations without any concrete proof. And as a Christian, oh, you shouldn't judge. You shouldn't judge. That's the other thing that they push in our culture. We are supposed to judge and set apart and block out those who are not of the faith. And again, there's verses by Paul stating this. What we're not supposed to do is judge like a Pharisee on somebody who's coming in from a former life, like you saw today with the tattoo thing. So you're skipping the whole message because you didn't like the tattoos, even though if you listen to the message, the guy, he's adamant about the faith. So we have this surface level judgment that is being dictated by what our policies, what our politicians are saying, what the church is telling me, but we don't really know in contrast what the other side believes. Like my substitute pastor guy's in his 70s. He's always saying like Islam's the problem or the problem we're having in the border, and they're trying to say that America was founded by bad people and Columbus. I'm like, well, he had slaves, and then there's also the crypto U. So yeah, and then there is the oh yeah, George Washington. They're trying to say he was a bad founding father. And the guy sitting next to me, I showed him the picture of the Baphomet and George Washington's statue, and he just was nodding his head next to me. I'm like, because you don't know anything about this as well. You're blaming Islam, but you know nothing about the Talmud. So you're pitching Christian nationalism, even if it's a very sub level, because you don't know anything else about the darkness in this world. And I think that's the problem as Christians, as opposed to raising us to be militant against what is evil, like have no part with it, but expose it. We don't know what it is. So when it starts creeping in or mingling with us, we don't know how to cut it off. And that's the problem, is that we got cancer and we don't even know what the symptoms are.
And if you don't know what the symptoms are, you become a part of the infection and spread it. And I'll go back
Yes.
to Salem again. I mentioned that earlier. If you don't understand what witchcraft is and understand your enemy, you don't know your enemy. So just think about if they ask the questions. You're being accused of a witch. And I know you're a witch because you're using plants. Imagine if the woman just turned around and said, yeah, I was using some herbs and roots to make a tea because I've got a bad cough. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, you're not a witch. Wow, cool. That's awesome. Can I have some of those herbs? Instead, it's the dictation of this is the church because I'm the church leader. This is evil because I said it is so. And this is how
Yes.
we're going to end up with what I think will be the next war based on God's judgment under a theocracy. And we're seeing the foundations of that occur. There's a lot of TikToks, a lot of threads, a lot of short little clips of, and it starts off with either pitched as Orthodox or Catholic, the urge to go and conquer the Holy Land. And then I'll have quick, fast little
Mm.
shots of Nazi stormtroopers, Rhodesian troops fighting the communists in Africa, pictures of Roman legionnaires marching, and the cross and crusading knights, all these things that whip up a frenzy with young men to try and embolden them and want them to go die in the Holy Land. Well, how's that going to be brought about? We've already heard Trump fully backing Netanyahu. The ceasefire is temporary, and BB himself has said Donald Trump and America are fully poised to support us in the war against Hamas. So
Mm.
what does that kind of imply? That there's going to be a true, on a surface, American involvement in the Middle East. And that'll
Yep.
go beyond Gaza. That will go to Iran. That will go to all the places which are ironically a part of greater Israel, which
Hmm.
pitch to Christian nationalism would be, this is the Crusades 2.0, boys. Get ready. We're taking back the Holy Land. And we're giving it to the Zionists.
And this is what Netanyahu called us, useful idiots. We get primed by the Masonic cousins in the West. We go over there and shed our blood, and who ends up walking away as the top dog? They do, because they get the land, they get what they wanted. They got the expansionist packet, a manifest destiny. Then I'm chuckling because their map, roughly of Greater Israel, it replicates what Nimrod's empire was after he came down from the plains of Shinar. And I'm going, Holy Land or Holly Land? And when we go into Holly, are we talking about trees and groves under Ashtaroth and Baal? In which case, if we are start unraveling all of this, and it's over here going, guys, we do a lot for trees, don't we? If Christ said, "My kingdom's not of this world," why are we so geopolitical centrist with how we view the world? Oh, you have to defend that border. Your government tells you to, or it's your border. Since when?
And willing to spill blood on said soil for,
Right.
the
Like
kingdom of God, which doesn't exist here. It never has. It's
you,
the
you
earthly
tell
realm.
me you tell me this is my land, but I have to pay taxes for it. You tell me that it's a free country, but I have to pay money in order to get a fishing license just to throw a worm into a pool of water. Do you see, like, if I'm free, why am I paying you money on that I earned, or I'm still paying fees on my car per year if I've actually earned this? And there's a certain point, dude, where I'm over here going, I can't buy home of the free and land, land of the brave, home of the free. I'm like, no, it's land of the slaves and home of the fees. There is no freedom here. And the more I hear all these people saying we're spreading freedom and democracy to all these other countries, I'm like, democracy? I thought we were a republic country. Shouldn't we be bringing them republics? In which case, why are we smashing the craps out of them with bombs before we hand it over to a dictator and we take their resources? Like, at a certain point, do you hear your logic? And because most conservatives think that they're all like, I'm the Han Solo. It's like, no, you're just another imperialist stormtrooper because you're afraid of breaking the law. You're afraid of going rogue and off the system. If you don't comply to the Emperor Palpatine's orders, you're, again, convenience of the empire. Or do you say, no, we need to go back to being independent galaxies? To go back to your Star Wars stuff. But
Well,
this is, sorry, go ahead.
and this is where a lot of people don't realize. You look at the word soldier. A soldier, ultimately, in this whole geopolitical hellscape that is the world and empires, soldiers are a blood sacrifice for the sun god. Sol, god of the sun, Dier,
Yes.
meaning those who are about to die. It's
Yes.
sacrificing, and it might be two nation states who are in cahoots just to kill each other's men, or it could be
Hmm.
vying factions within that kind of mob mentality war for the world. They're fighting over the physical. They're using us as pawns. If you don't
Yes.
realize that you're a blood sacrifice to this kind of beast system, you really need to look a little bit more closely at what's going on. And with this rise in a theocratic North American bloc or the West, I think that's ultimately where it goes, and it goes via the controlling mechanisms of Zionism. And those who don't identify with Zionism as a Christian, you're going to be the apostates, the ones who are targeted, who are going to be dealt with. And we're seeing these laws start to come in with America and predominantly across the West it already exists, anti-Semitism laws. They're lumping and conflating ideas of criticizing governments, approaches, policies, things that are openly said and promoted with being anti-Semitic. And that's how they're going to catch a lot of people out. Well-intentioned people who genuinely care about children being bombed into oblivion, or seeing on the nightly news that an area is being carpet bombed for the 5th time and that's where the refugees were told to go and hide, yet it was bombed. You can't ask these questions now because we're getting these laws infused into the system that exists around us. And when that becomes a North American bloc, one of the 10 kingdoms, that control structure is going to more honed, more pinpointed towards people who speak out against it.
Right.
It's that phariseeism that we're talking about. They want to do everything in their power to try and stop people from shedding light on the darkness that exists within their false light. And it comes down, and this isn't just a plan that's existed since the 1970s via a Club of Rome idea. This goes back since the inception of the garden. This is even before the garden, before the creation of man. This is an eternal war that's been going on since time immemorial. But this current phase of it stems back to the Club of Rome and the dictating of borders of those 10 kingdoms, which replicate biblical scripture. And I'm ranting at the moment, but I've got to talk about the 3 original founders of the Club of Rome. First,
for sure.
Alexander King, a British pioneer of sustainable development and a chemist, Scottish man linked to the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. He wrote the following books with colourful titles such as The First Global Revolution, An Eye to the Future, and Science and Policy, International Stimulus. So some very New World Order talking points. What do you expect? The second gentleman, Aurelio Pacici, probably butchered that last name, sorry, Italian listeners, an Italian industrialist and philanthropist, which wrote The Limits to Growth. So already not really pigeonholing the idea of a global government, but limiting it to isolated areas. And then again, the last one, David Rockefeller, do I need to say any more? We all know about that guy. We know what his shtick is. These founding members, industrialists, influential men, it's not elected presidents, it's not prime ministers, it's not even the oligarchies of kings and queens that helped develop the Club of Rome. It was the real controlling powers of the world. And they set about a plan which influences and controls those things we think we're a part of. As a part of the Commonwealth, most Australians would think the head of state's the king, the queen, whoever's alive at the time. That's the ultimate authority within the governmental system. It's not. It's the real players behind the scenes, the non-government organizations, the billionaire industrial philanthropists. They're the ones pulling the strings and controlling a lot of this. And a lot of people would have seen that famous photo of Rockefeller poking our current king in the chest, telling him what's what. If that's not a total show of strength and authority, I don't know what is. So people need to pull away from this idea of voting's going to save you. Identifying with a crown or monarchy is going to save you. No, these things are very surface level. These are very worldly things, but there are people that truly run the show behind the scenes who are tapped into and connected to something otherworldly that are bringing this about. And it's happening on their timeline, not God's timeline. And they're trying to usher something in to bring about their savior, their Messiah, their Christ, which is, as we know, is not Christ, it's the Antichrist, the deceiver, and it's all coming into fruition from 2025 to 2030.
I mean, you have to kind of wonder, because I've had somebody else saying, how do you know the Bible hasn't been manipulated? Or, there used to be more books and all that stuff. I said, well, if you know that truth, you can go read those books if you want to determine that for yourself. God's given you a mind of reasoning to determine what is true, what is not. And also the Holy Spirit to help vet that. But as well, who's to say that if they think they can't breach the dome or get into heaven, that they want Christ to return because somehow they think that they're going to be setting the trap of, oh, look, he came now down to us, so now we just have to harness him, and boom, we got him right where we want him. Like, who's to say they're not intentionally trying to get that going, but they think they can change the final chapters of the book? That's always a probability right there.
It's quite hilarious because when they say the trap of Christ, I just imagine them with the cardboard box, the stick and string.
Yes, yes,
Got him. No, no, that's not how it's going to work. And this shows the ego and the hubris of these people. They think
yes.
they have truly developed a global empire already. It's just not written in paper as yet. They have ultimate control. They have the infrastructure. They have the weapons and the means of things that are far beyond human comprehension. We get that, but they still think that's enough. And
Yeah.
they think by, luring Christ back by trying to bring about judgment and bring about the end of days, that they can trap him in that cardboard box, or they can
Yes.
blow him out from existence with some kind of super weapon. It's quite ironic that their hubris and their ego lends them to think that they can do that when they've already lost. And they know they've lost. They are on the same timeline, but they're
Yeah.
pulling all the punches they can, throwing as many psyops, as many ideas at the wall, hoping something sticks.
And I think that's why, as you said before, why the truth scares them so much is because you're kind of being that memento mori servant going behind the general saying, remember, you're going to die. Don't get too cocky. Remember, you're going to die. It's like, shut up. Well, yeah, like you keep saying that. Like, I know that's your job, but shut up. And that's why they have to shut us up, because at a certain point, that is irking their ego of somehow I think I could still beat the system. So first, what do they have to do? They are literally using the internet, the thing that we created that's supposed to be the host, the foundational host of what we have planned. They're using that to inform people. We need to put a cap on that. And then they do something like with TikTok. But now, I think, was it the UK? I think you already said something in Australia. They're, as you noted before, while we're all arguing all this other stuff in the US, they're planning something for the youth in the US, to censor all this. And again, if they do it with the Christian nationalists, like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Why would you be against that? Are you for that? No. But I'm also saying, do you see how far this could potentially go where none of us get access to online, which again, if we're going digital with money, shall not be able to buy or sell. This is the beast system. You're becoming animals because you're becoming machines and you're not being human. And in America, the lack of compassion and humanity for somebody from another country, dude, it irks me something fierce. And I don't blame them. I don't blame people for having the opinion about Americans. It's sickening. And I've often said, I have a lot of Brit roots and Scot roots. I said, you know what? When I'm watching all these old movies, I said, I think I'd be the guy that's be saddling up with the Gurkhas or whatnot and being like, you know what? I'm willing to die with you because you got more bravery than all the freaking white guys in my platoon. There's something there, dude, where they wanted to get rid of the tribe and the warrior, and they wanted to make it solely a soldier. You follow the legislation, and what's the thing they also drill into us? The first order of every soldier is to obey all orders. Those are not the words of a free man. That is the credence of a slave. And if folks do not understand this, then you truly do not understand what it is to be a warrior in Christ, because in Christ you are free, you're liberated. Death has no meaning to you because you know where you're going to go ultimately. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. But because we're so focused of that freaking red, white, and blue, or fill in whatever country Union Jack, I don't know what you got over in the Australia, but it's kind of in that concept is unless I'm dying for that or the special people and their land, their sacred land, I'm not a good person. Where's this written? Tell me, point to me in the Bible where it says you have to shed blood for another country or for your kingdom in order to be a good person. You don't see that anywhere in the Bible at all. I don't know where this came from, dude, but it's definitely the doctrines of devils, and I'm ready for home. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for home.
Yeah, we definitely see America tends to export its culture and the rest of the world follows 6 to 12 months later. It's always going to be in the fact. Culturally, technologically, socially, it seems to go in line. I think Malay was a testing ground for how populism would work outside of America
Hmm.
using the Trump style, but we can definitely see that within the Anglosphere of Canada or of Australia, New Zealand, that the old politics isn't working. The left and the right paradigm people have given up on, so they're throwing popularists in the mix. One of the big movements in Australia at the moment is very Vox Americana. It's libertarianism, with weird injections of ethno-nationalism and this
Yeah.
idea of what an Australian is. And yes, there's historical and cultural foundations of our country, but it's this very much gather together under one sole identity and don't question anything. And this is where we get into the idea you said, the difference between a warrior and a soldier. The code of a soldier is to follow all orders to the T. That's it. Code of a warrior is to do what is just, to do what is right, to do
Right.
what is moral, to do what is godlike. Warriors don't go off and find the fight. They fight when they are needed.
Yes.
Soldiers, they go where they're told to, they die where they're told to, they do it to the letter. That's the difference. God never said in the Bible that you can't fight for your own protection, for your house, your home, your family. He said you can't go out and wage wars in my name to conquer lands because kingdom of God is not on the earth. You can't try to bring
Yes.
about the kingdom of God in the earthly realm when it is spiritual, because what you end up doing is you create an inversion of that is ripe for the picking by Satan to rule this empire, this world. He's
Mm.
been expelled, he's been kicked out, he can't go back. This is his realm now, and he means with all his power to conquer it with our will to go yes and capitulate. That's the only way he rules this realm. If there's even one human who comes at the end of Satan's judgment and wear the witness and say, yes, he did atrocities, he's the deceiver, he's the bad
Yes.
guy, God wins. He only needs one human. And that's the thing.
Yes.
Everyone's getting thrown into this ideological, political, theocratic warfare to try and win our hearts, minds, and souls. And for the most part, hearts and minds have been won in the physical realm. It's the soul side of things that I think gives a lot of us discernment, a lot of people like us who question the authority, question the systems that are in play now, because the soul hasn't been taken. You can get elements of the mind, you get elements of the heart, but you can't win the soul if you know what's going on.
Dude, that was a profound statement. That video I sent you. So what is one witness? Are you aligned with the word, with the way you were living? But secondly, if you're having a new heavenly council, the Christians that were there, two witnesses. The word and those who are there with you. They were right next to you. Did they listen to you? Did they reject everything that you said? Like, please look into this. Here's a link. Here's a and they kept rejecting it. But then he goes and looks at us and says, "Hey, what do you think about this individual? You want my honest opinion?" They're kind of a douche to me. Because Revelation 3:9 says, "I in the synagogue of Satan, he has them come and basically apologize to let them know that I've loved thee, that you put them through so much." And I think people don't realize is ideologies can make you part of something. Because just like with The Walking Dead, I am Negan, we're all Negan. No, you're not. but in this cult apocalyptic dystopian future, this is what people are doing is saying, I identify with that, or I pray for them. And it's like, so you're not of Christ. And as a Christian, that is what's paramount is like, I don't identify with anything in this world. I don't have any pre-adjective. It's just Christian. Just Christian. That's it. At the end of the day, I'm ready to die for what I believe in. You, on the other hand, are willing to kill what you believe in. Religion versus faith. I love him so much, it's Romeo Juliet. I will take the elixir and go where he went. Whereas the other ones are over here saying, no, if you don't love me, then nobody else can love you either. And they take you out. Two opposite outcomes of a relationship here, but that's kind of what I'm seeing with the way the relationship it is with the world. And people don't want to acknowledge it, dude. It's crazy. I
Yes,
think that's why
removing.
I think that's why they call it the whore of Babylon. Because what is a whore ultimately? It's a false love. It's a fake love. You have to pay for it usually, right? And you are paying for it with your soul if you accept the terms. Whereas the other one's saying, no, I give my soul over willingly. I want you like, whom shall I send? Send me, Lord. I'm willing to be that vessel. I don't care if it costs me my life. I'll speak on your behalf. Cool. And the other side's over here saying, give me a body. Give me a body. I just want a body. I don't care about all the rest of it. Just give me the body. Dude, it's. I was talking about this analogy is that if you don't have a purpose, you become a pawn in another man's game. And when you play chess, if you don't move the pawns, the only things that can move are the knights. And eventually the knights have to take each other out because they're forced to go in the L pattern. So eventually they have to duke it out. And that is the proverbial matrix. I'm saying that loosely because I know that's a Kabbalah term. But if they're duking it out, that's just like Neo and Miss Agent Smith, right? Or Jones, or whatever his freaking is. I don't watch the movies. I never found out the fascination of that series, to be absolutely honest. I'll admit it here. But if they're duking it all out, everybody else just keeps walking past them because they think everything's normal. They don't see it, but everybody else is duking it out because if you let everybody else know, Neo, they're all going to want to have what you have. Whereas I have to keep everybody asleep, whereas you want to wake everybody up. And this is why you have the parable of sleeping bridesmaids. Five are asleep, five are awake. I'm kind of getting that more and more nowadays, dude. Like it's like he didn't say that to people. So like end times prophecies or revelation means lifting of the veil. So apocalypse, lifting of the veil. Before you kiss your bride, you get intimate, first time sharing a kiss. You were revealed and understanding. Oh wow, you look so beautiful. This is the same thing spiritually speaking. Revelation, I think, was really written for people who are awake and in the Word. Whereas for the sleeping bridesmaids, you've heard of it, but you're like a Catholic. It sits on the shelf, it gets dusty, and you never open it again.
Yeah, I've paid my penance, my sins are done. I'm going to be elevated up into heaven. I'll be fine. It's totally
Great,
cool.
great. And I'm better than you because it was the original church. Huh? It's the original model. Okay? It's a Model T. I have a Mercedes Benz now. You're like, you know what? This is how that argument sounds to me, dude. It's the original. What?
It's
What's
maybe
wrong with this?
the Roman copy of the original. And like, what was the original? This is the thing. You can argue about semantics and what was the true church and what was intended, but ultimately, I think more and more people end up turning away from hard fixed positions of denominations because they do find that personal relationship with Christ, which is always intended to be. Look, the meaning of
Yes.
church. A church isn't a brick and mortar building with a pew and a fancy cross on top. It's a gathering of people that
Mm,
share the word, share relationships with one another about God. And that's what's been lost in all of this. And the denominations are that identity politics within faith that has been weaponized and re-weaponized for the 21st century and all of this. But to round this show out, we know that the topic has been about the 10 kingdoms and the things that are happening with America moving forward with Trump's inauguration.
mhm.
Some people would say it's not going to happen. The 10th kingdom, the North American bloc, that's just a pipe dream. He was being hyperbolic about those statements. What do you see happening within, say, just Trump's next 4 years with the North American Union? What's going to occur?
Personally speaking, as an American, what I can assess is very similar to what I outlined a little bit earlier, where he's going to beat BRICS with changing the national debt. He's going to secure Panama and Greenland, especially for the trading routes. Um, and I don't know if it's going to be bloody or not, because I don't think Panama would be able to withstand us for that long. To be absolutely honest, too small of a country unless they get aid, in which case we have World War III. Now, whether or not World War III actually kicks in, I don't know. But in the years ahead from Google, it says Armageddon's in 2027. Be that as it may, because Elon says also in 2027 he's going to have all these like 2 million robots in sales. That's also the year of the goat. Find that interesting considering he wore the Baphomet suit with the Devil's Champion. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's something there. Um, but mostly, I can't put my finger on it specifically, but I do think he's going to kick off within the next 2 years. I'm not even going to say four. I think it's going to be within like the first year and a half. He's first going to do something with the disease in the Mexican border because like I did that post with again like 11 citations. Don't he wants to find a disease? He'll go after them. He'll start honing in what he has going on at home for me for the first year, 8 months, and then I think he's going to start expanding. He's going to be like, oh wow, we forgot all about it. Then he's going to be like, okay, now that you've seen what I've done on the home front, we're going to expand even further. And once he secures that over the next 2 years, I think that's when they're going to start kicking off with the one world government. But I think they're going to do online censorship by 27, personally speaking. And I don't know. I'll throw this in before I throw it back to you. Everybody keeps saying like, "Are you worried? Should we move out?" Well, if it's going to be Antichrist system, you're not going to escape. So, but secondly, I don't know why, but I have this peace and security that if God wants his people to start moving, or he's going to activate his warriors or whatever have you, I'm really leaning that God is going to basically give the vision of Joseph that when he's talking to, like, oh, you can still marry, you can still have Mary as a wife, blah blah blah, or get out of town now because Herod wants to come and kill the kids. I'm not saying this is a prophecy. This is not anything. I'm just saying I have an inner conviction of peace of mind that God will do that accordingly. Especially if it is the last days, that God will definitely speak to his saints and tell us where he wants us to go. And again, if he was willing to direct the children of Israel how to get out of Egypt with a pillar of fire, right, and the smoke and fire in the air, I think he would be willing to do that for his saints if he does have a need for us in the last days. That's all I just want to throw out there because everybody keeps asking me, so I thought I'd throw it out on a show.
Yeah, why not? Um, I tend to think that this is what will occur, and like I said, this is just my belief based on what I'm seeing. I think Greenland will ultimately be sold off, aka given to the United States, like you mentioned, not only
Fair.
for the trade routes, but for the geopolitical position against Russia, like this militarized state,
Mm,
having that whole northern hemisphere. I think Canada won't be the annexing that people think it will be. I think you'll see maybe certain provinces of Canada that will choose to want to become pseudo United States, similar to like a Puerto Rico type of event where they're a part of America, but they're not really part of America. It'll be a territory, not so much a state. When it comes to Mexico, I think what we're going to see is the weaponization of the MS-13 gangs, the cartels, the drug war. It's going to be a means of kicking out the illegals at the same time as going, hang on, there's a lot of heavy criminals on the border that keep jumping the border, bringing drugs into America. We need to put boots on the ground there. The northern states of Mexico will be kind of annexed in this war where you'll see real boots on the ground fighting with US troops on foreign soil, backed by the Mexicans because it'll be against the cartels and everyone will love it. During that time, what do we see historically happens during conflict and warfare? Disease springs up. The American troops
mm.
go home from the border. They have this new disease from southern Central America. That's the new pandemic, possibly. And then after that kind of consolidates, we see something happen maybe internationally with China and the Panama Canal, because arguably China has a lot of deep-seated roots in Panama at the moment where economically they're really invested in it. And I think there's more of an issue on the theater of war because we know it's all manipulated and controlled. The theater of the war is going to move away from Taiwan and it's going to be the Panama Canal with some kind of global conflict. But that's just my guttural feeling and seeing what's happening. It's going to be that slow drip feed. Like we've got 5 years to 2030. I think we're going to see a
Hmm.
lot of policy shifts and a lot of people revealing themselves within the next 12 months at the same time as a lot of smaller brush fires start to happen before we see the blazing inferno in front of us.
I can definitely, yeah, I can definitely see that, dude. I think you're right because the cartels are heavily funded by China, so it's almost like a proxy army, just like we do in the Middle East. And it's like, yeah, go ahead, fight them off because you're the closest. Again, it's easier to fund and send money overseas because again, they're almost better equipped than some of our military with some aspects. But as you said, I think they would be more than willing. As opposed, you already also noticed that the Kabbalah bracelet of the new president of Mexico. That was a
Hmm.
nice catch. Nice catch. Thought we
Yep.
wouldn't notice, but we did. Um, but I think you're right. And then they would give some sort of thing of like, yeah, we were kind of hesitant, but I guess we'll give you a little portion because you need to do your American stuff and it's for the good. You're helping clean our country up too. And again, for the greater good, peace and security, peace and safety.
They'll take a leaf
Yeah.
out of BB's book of it's a buffer zone. The northern states of
Mm,
Mexico, this is the buffer zone to make sure the border's truly in control. It'll be Mount
right.
Herman and parts of Lebanon all over again. It's the same playbook.
We're not invading, we're just securing.
It's a buffer zone. We're buffering our empire, and that's it. Did I say empire? I meant these United States.
It's like you're doing. I think they saw a skit where they're doing Risk, and they're saying, "Russia, what are your troops over there? What are your tanks doing over there? What tanks?
Well, thanks.
Oh, no
Well,
tanks over there. It's like, yeah, you're invading me, you idiot.
the USSR, I thought that fell. Yes, that's what we wanted you to think.
Yes, we're all comrades.
Oh, Lordy. But I think, earlier on before where you said that the economic side of things of Trump being like he's a businessman, it's what he's based on. Him solving the financial woes and having the counterpart to BRICS, which ultimately dismantles that system. I think that's a revelation to me because I'd never considered that. I'd always thought of the BRICS overwhelming the current financial system and that being the beast system, but it's so much more in line if Trump manages to pull out a Phoenix coin that then
Yes,
dismantles this global conglomerate of different finances from around the world. That's just poetically beautiful for their play.
especially because of our on our money and God we trust. Our God is money, and again, the all-seeing eye is on our money. Again, with the Economist Magazine of 25, as I did
Mhm.
earlier. I could be wrong, but I'm like, if Nimrod's son is the originator of coinage and he's the god of trade, that makes the most sense to me that America would be the one that's like, nah, not today. And then it ends up backfiring because everybody's like, well, that was amazing what you did. No, no, it really wasn't. He broke down the wall and he had freaking put up bars.
Well, you know what? I think we've done pretty well on this topic, considering it's just the two of us. I
Yeah,
think it's always a great dynamic to have when we're speaking about ultimately American politics and that side of the spiritual warfare. To have both an American and someone from the outside looking in, we get that 10,000 foot view at the same time as
yeah.
having the person who's the boots on the ground. And you've been able to apply that so well. You've brought things to my thinking that I never considered before with the BRICS and the Trump war of economics that seems to play in so well. So thanks for the conversation, mate. Can you lead the
Yeah.
show out with a prayer?
Sure. Lord, we just want to thank you again for this time of fellowship that we are able to have while we're still able to have it, even though we are many thousands of miles apart from each other, Lord, that your ecclesia is able to connect, that we're able to compare notes and combat this spiritual warfare. We thank you, Lord, that you've given us your word to have confidence and not to be afraid with the things that are coming and unfolding. That a lot of us who are feeling the days going faster, but having a peace and calmness in our hearts are seizing us as these days and troubles and woes are escalating evermore. We ask, Lord, that those who are still seeking you, that you will have your hand over them and protection. And those who are kind of on the fence, that Lord, they will start to wake up and be a little bit more controversial on behalf of the kingdom of heaven. We can use all the recruits we can get. Thank you again, Lord, for this conversation. And please bless Drew with his family that is starting up. We ask that you have your blessings upon that. In your name we pray and ask this. Amen.
Amen. And just to add on to that wonderful prayer, if you're a listener and you come across content creators you think will be able to add to our conversations, regardless of whether they're controversial topics or not, please reach out to us. We need to expand these conversations beyond our own little group. And you, the listeners, you give us great feedback. So if there's other people you think should join the panel and join these conversations, please send it to anyone that's been previously on the show. And on that note, we will catch you next time.